Welcome to Talking Pictures. My name is Christian Genzel. I'm a filmmaker and film journalist from Salzburg, Austria. Talking Pictures is a podcast series in which I talk to the people who made some of my favorite movies. Today's guest is filmmaker Tony Giglio, and our conversation revolves around his 2019 film Doom: Annihilation, which he wrote and directed. Unlike the 2005 Doom movie starring The Rock, this newer adaptation of the infamous and influential ego shooter video game by id Software was made on a very small budget, and it's not a sequel or remake, but basically a new take on the story of a Marines team fighting a horde of demons which infiltrated a space station on Phobos, one of the moons of Mars. Doom: Annihilation is a well-made, fun action film which finds a good balance between thrills, carnage, horror, and excitement, and it has a lot of details capturing the spirit of the game. In our interview, Tony talks about the development of the film, the adaptation process, the budgetary restraints of the production, and the appeal of the game. He also discusses why id Software weren't involved, and how a miscommunication caused premature negative reactions. And for the first time, he talks about the sequel he wanted to do, which was essentially greenlit, then postponed during the pandemic, and eventually, and unfortunately, cancelled. Tony Giglio started out in Hollywood as an assistant on several cult classics, including Michael Mann's Heat, Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead, and John Carpenter's Escape from LA. As a writer and director, Tony's made several other cool low-budget movies, some of which he also discusses during our conversation, most notably his 2005 action thriller Chaos, starring Jason Statham, Ryan Phillippe, and Wesley Snipes. He also directed movies like the tense submarine thriller In Enemy Hands, starring William H. Macy and Til Schweiger, or the dark backwoods horror film Timber Falls. And as a screenwriter, he worked on the Death Race sequels for Paul Anderson. My interview with Tony Giglio was conducted in connection with our German-language podcast Lichtspielplatz. So if you speak German, please visit lichtspielplatz.at and check out episode number 71, which features an in-depth discussion of the two Doom movies. Also, make sure to listen to our interviews with the original director of the 2005 Doom movie, Enda McCallion, and my conversation with Doom screenwriter Dave Callahan. If you enjoy my interviews here on Talking Pictures, please consider heading over to patreon.com/talkingpicturespodcast and supporting the production of new episodes. And make sure to check out the other interviews on our website, talkingpicturespodcast.com. So without any further ado, here is director Tony Giglio. Tony, thanks for joining me and talking about Doom: Annihilation. And the way I understand it, it was you who brought the idea of doing another Doom film to Universal, and they were reluctant to do it. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you became involved with the film and how it came together.
Sure. Yeah, happy to be here, Christian. Thank you for the invitation. So I had been working with this division of Universal 1440 for, at that point, about 7 or 8 years. Started writing the Death Race sequels. I ended up writing a couple other projects that didn't go, but I had a really great relationship with them. And I was one of the executives, Lisa Gooding, who I worked with a lot, invited me to lunch one day and said that some of their IP was getting a little stale and if I had any ideas. And I had already, for a very long time, thought that Doom would be a great, there's a better version of a Doom movie out there. No hate towards The Rock's version, but, I was a big fan of the game. When I saw the 2005 version, I was very disappointed because I felt it veered off from the source material. There's not a lot of meat on the bone in terms of story from the Doom games. I think it was basically just an awesome technology that you could blast demons and, transport and do all this kind of stuff. But there was more than the first film came. I didn't understand why they made certain choices. So I had pitched to Lisa a Doom movie, and in knowing that their budgets at 1440 are a lot less. So I had pitched a version that was probably about 7 or 8 million. And that was a little too expensive for them. Plus, at the time, it was prior to the Bethesda relaunching the new game, Doom game. So this was probably 2015-ish. And the first Doom film just was a financial disappointment, to say the least, for Universal. So there was not a big rush to make another Doom movie. There was a very funny, once we got announced, there were all these stories about how we were just this cash grab to keep the rights going, and maybe that it happens for Spider-Man or something, but it definitely didn't happen for us. I was rejected with my first pitch. I had a 20-page treatment already written on spec. They knew what they were going to get. And they liked it, but they said they're just not interested in making a Doom film. And then they hired me for another project. And by the time that one finished, the new Doom game had come out. And the numbers for the Bethesda game were just off the charts. And now, while we couldn't use any of the Bethesda game story or anything, we were very restricted to the properties that Universal owned. They came back to me and said, now that this is back in the people's consciousness and talking about it, like, if you could make your film for 4 million, we could probably make your movie. And I very ignorantly said, sure. I probably should have said, well, 4 million's not a lot of money, but I was so excited, and it was a chance to do something that I had been dreaming about for a very long time. I tried desperately to get an interview to direct the first Doom movie, but I was unavailable. I was on my movie Chaos, and I was in London, and I was trying to do anything I could when I heard it was in development, and I just, they had hired somebody and I just couldn't get in. I was very disappointed. But so it'd been something I'd been thinking about since I first played the game, really, in the mid-90s. I was not a big gamer growing up. I had Atari and then Intellivision, and then when I got to college, I was much more interested in making short films with my friends and doing like film project stuff, rather than at the time everybody was playing Nintendo in the dorms, and I just wasn't into it. And then what got me was a friend of mine invited me over. This is well into California, well into the 90s. And and then so my friend was working over at VFX house in Venice, and we were all supposed to go out one night. And we went to pick him up, and he said, hey, I want to show everybody something. And he set us all up. There was like 4 of us, and he set us all up on the network to play this game where you blast demons. We ended up, like, from 10 p.m., we played till about 5:30 in the morning. We never ended up going out. And I was like, that was the most addictive fun I had ever had, And from that point on, I had always thought about what a Doom movie could be.
Which aspects of the game fascinated you as a filmmaker? Which aspects made you think, oh, this could turn into a great movie?
The scope of it. Simply, I grew up Catholic. I'm not super religious, but I definitely have that background. And the idea, I've always been fascinated by the supernatural. Like, slashers don't scare me as much as demons, as part of ghosts and stuff like that. I've always been very fascinated with that aspect. Like, so the fact that it wasn't just blasting creatures, it was the demons have opened up a portal and they're coming into our world. And that just was so exciting, and such a massive epic scale of a film. And the fact that they had found these things on Mars and everywhere else, and it was just like, were they here? Like, I just started thinking about, like, had they been here? How did they get banished? How did they do all this stuff? Like, because clearly, like, if they had left those the gates, they were here. Then why did they leave? What happened? What all that kind of stuff? Like, even way back in the early 90s when it was simply just, you're on your keyboard firing and blasting, that was the most exciting aspect of it, of coming up with the lore, which is what I really centered on in my film. And I had been developing the lore for a very long time. And it was all like, I was having an argument I couldn't figure it out one day, and I was having an argument about science, which I'm not a very good science speaker. And a friend of mine, I was like, well, what if there was an element that was not part of our, periodic table? Like it wasn't found in the solar system. He said, well, that's just impossible. And I go, that's what I want. So the idea that the gates were comprised of something that our scientists knew nothing about, that spurred all of the development of the lore. So that was the biggest thing. Like, clearly I wanted to blast demons as well, but that was what excited me the most. And I don't even know if the creators thought that much about it at the time, but to me, that was everything.
So the way I understand it, the fact that the games don't really have much of a story, or you already mentioned the first game, it doesn't even have a plot or any sort of character or anything. That was sort of like an opportunity for you to sort of build a world around that, right? It wasn't so much a challenge, but something that you could expand on.
Yeah, no, that's, it was, I'm not comparing myself in any way, but Kubrick liked to develop short stories into films because he felt like the short stories were heavy on the immediate plot and light on a lot of the other elements that you could, as a filmmaker, add to and grow. And I kind of agree with this. You had a basic plot. You have something, you have scientists experimenting with the gate. It opened it, something's come out, some Marines go to investigate, all the Marines die except for one. That's all in the little preamble of the video game. You see, I think in the first film, you're a guard and you're staying back, and you see all those Marines go in and then they never come out. So, if you take all that element and then one Marine has to go all the way through the base, and because the ship's down, he can't fly the ship. And the only way out is to teleport back to Earth with, there's enough there where now you just have to create who is that main character, and what are those other elements that are, what are your themes, what are all this kind of stuff building towards. So there was a lot, and I actually took I don't think it's any secret, like I was heavily influenced for this from Aliens. James Cameron film is just such a perfect film in every way, shape, or form. And, to me, that combined with my idea of building up that lore, and that's how I kind of created the characters. And the characters came from an interview I read with the creators of the game. And, they originally, if you look in the original manual and everything, there's no mention of who your main character is. And they did that consciously. They wanted the player. They didn't want Mario. They didn't want a special character that you are controlling. They wanted you to feel like you were playing. So this is why I basically felt that there was a lot of freedom. And I know that there's been this very big diversity push in productions, and I'd love to say that was the guiding aspect of my casting, but it really wasn't. It was more like, I want every single person on the planet represented because they're all the game players. So that was another conscious effort to make it feel like, every single person could see themselves in the movie because they all see themselves in the game. So that was how I interpreted that part of the game. I know that in subsequent years and stuff, everybody deemed Doom Guy, but girls played that game too. So there was an aspect to it where Doom Guy represented every single person, white, black, male, female, everything. So that was my idea for the game, the film characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does have a very strong female lead, and it's something when I look at your other films, you have a lot of those very like tough women in the cast. When I look at Chaos, the like the forensic specialist in Chaos, for example. If I look at SWAT, the SWAT Under Siege, Adrian Palicki, the character. I mean, a lot of women who really can sort of do the same thing that the men can do, and that's something that's still kind of unusual in action movies.
I've never been attracted to, I think there's an aspect to, I've never been attracted to the dainty. I like, the woman that can smack you. I mean, I married one. She's the tough one in the family. But going back, it's like, oh man, Keegan Connor Tracy is just a scene stealer in Chaos. Little side story for her, since you mentioned it. So that film was besieged with financial issues. So we had actually had multiple shutdowns. Financing kept dropping out. So her scene kept being pushed. And so it was after like a 14-day drop off. We finally get the money situation back, at least for a little bit. We all get back to work. Everybody is just depressed. Jason Statham's down, Ryan Phillippe's down. The cast and crew were like just waiting for the next plug to be pulled. We're just so down. And Keegan had never been on set yet. She worked the one day. So she shows up, and in take one, I basically used mostly all of take one, because the reactions of Ryan and Jason were, who the hell is this person? And she finished with the flip off of Statham. The whole cast and crew burst out laughing, and it made everybody feel just great. Like, okay, we're back. Let's put all the crap aside. Let's just concentrate on making a movie. So I give her a lot of credit for bringing a big energy back to a movie that needed it desperately. But for the characters, going back, we're talking about Doom. I was definitely, Ripley inspired. I had spent a lot of time over the years working with Paul Anderson, and he's the director of the Resident Evil franchise, most of them. There was a talk at one point I interviewed to direct the third one that was set in Vegas. It didn't work out. The studio wanted someone with a little more visual effects experience, but Paul ultimately had hired me to direct the second unit of Resident Evil Afterlife, the fourth one. I've always been a big fan of those films, of Paul, of the character that Mila kind of took that Ripley and made it a little more cartoonish, over the top action. But I liked how that was going. And what I wanted to find was, what would I do if I took those two characters and I merged them? So I wanted someone who was not as cartoonish as, say, Alice, and not as, super intense as Ripley. Find that medium person. And once again, I was not a big gamer. I liked the games that I liked the games. I liked, Grand Theft Auto. I played Resident Evil. I played Doom. I never knew that Joan Dark was from another, like a character name in another video game. I know that I got called out on that online, but it really came where once I found the theme of the film, that demons exist. If demons exist, angels exist. So if there's a hell, there's a heaven. And, I just felt like, we have this great warrior of history, Joan of Arc. And I felt like she would be the one of the inspirations for the main character. And I just thought Joan Dark sounded cool. I guess I wasn't alone in thinking that, but that's where she came from. And I wanted to give her, I always find that the strongest, there's that aspect of the opening of Coppola's Dracula, where Dracula, basically curses God for having his, love take sacrifice or commit suicide. And, that spawned the ultimate evil by just cursing out God. So I tried to infuse a little of that, where she basically had a mom that was trying to teach her all the good and God and all that stuff. And yet she gets taken from her at a young age. And Joan carries that cross with her, but she doesn't believe in it until she needs it, until she needs that moment. But I kind of liked that to be Joan's driving force, that she's basically turned into an atheist once her mom got taken from her. So yeah, once again, you would have never seen that in a Doom video game. Like none of that's there, but that's what's great about the game. It's an open palette of figuring out who these characters are, and it's so tough. I mean, I get it, like especially with Doom, because they don't have Mario, because they don't have that character that other people can see. Everybody saw themselves as Doom guy. So you're never going to meet up with the expectations. You also can't compete with a video game. You can't compete with 100 hours where you're controlling the action versus 90 minutes of watching something scripted. So you basically have to realize you're not going to make friends with a lot of the super fans of the game, but you just have to do your job.
Well, you did include a lot of stuff from the video games, just little extras like the colored key cards, for example, or the fact that at one point she's shooting at a barrel to kill one of the creatures. What was the process of developing that? Did you go back to the game and sort of think, oh, we could use something like that, we could add that?
I started, there was two waves to do it. So the first was just the things that I really liked. I loved shooting the barrels to kill the demons nearby. So I knew I had to have that. I knew I had to have the gates. I knew I was adamant that it had to be demons from hell. I felt like the previous film had changed what the creatures were. I don't know why they did it. Like I said, I wasn't involved in the development, but I thought they missed out on a really interesting opportunity. And the other thing is I knew I had to go to hell. I knew I had to go to hell. I had to do something. Those are the things that I fought for. I tried to bring in another character, the Dr. Betruger character. I basically the whole plot was basically taken from the first Doom game, except for the Betruger character, which I bring in. I think he's not really introduced until the third game, but I brought him in as somebody who was identifiable to the games, and in the most organic way I could, that he was the scientist responsible for the developing of this kind of stuff. I knew we had to have the gates. So when I had put in all these elements and then following the basic plot line, like they're experimenting, something goes wrong, Marines come in, all of them are killed except for one. I changed it a little bit. Joan doesn't stay back. She goes in with everybody, and then she has to, the only way she can survive is being transported back to Earth through the teleport. So all that I tried to keep intact. Once we had that done and we had a script that got signed off by Universal, working with Universal, one of the execs, Patty Jackson, who was the president of the division at the time, she said, what do you think about hiring like a video game focus group to like maybe 5 people who play all these games? They could read the script and give us some other insights we might have missed. My first instinct is I don't miss anything. Come on. But she's pretty great at her job. So I said, okay, let's look at it. And they were the ones who kind of was like, hey, what if you brought in there was all these doors that they were unlocking. He goes, you could use the color key cards. You could do, little things like that. There was like 20 things that, they did the Blaskovich recall where one of the guys was dead to the, all that kind of stuff that I knew about. But, when you're writing and starting to direct the film, there's a lot going on. And, I was concentrating on casting or something like that. And for this group to then independently look at what you did and go, what if you do this? So I then incorporated most of their notes. Like most of them they weren't trying to change the plot or anything. They were just trying to like take what we had and then add some of those little touches, which I thought were great. Like, and then the props department did a really good job of making the key cards look very close. They come up with the thing that said health on it and stuff like the health boxes. And now originally and I shot it a little differently. Like they came up with, I originally had Joan just stumble across the BFG room, but they were the ones who had come up with making it the special coded room, the secret room. And unfortunately, there was a miscommunication. This happens sometimes in low budgets in foreign countries where I wanted this, the secret room was supposed to be a solid door, like in the game. But something got lost in translation and they ended up making it a glass door. And it was, I didn't see it, like literally it wasn't built until the day before we were supposed to shoot it. So there was nothing we could do at the last minute. So I tried to shoot it in a way where it wasn't so obvious, but yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer because I was like, they're supposed to be stumbling across, see the symbol like you would in the game. And they just walk past this glass room and I'm like, all right, well, it still works, but little things like that. They had come up with a couple of things like that I thought brought in those elements, and I probably ignorantly thought that all the gamers watching would go cool, but they didn't. I think some did appreciate some of the stuff, but there was not as much excitement about that kind of stuff as I thought there would be. But
yeah, I mean, the reaction from the gamers, at least when the first trailer came out, was well, kind of vicious. I think a lot of people sort of posted stuff when they first saw, like, the first couple of images they saw. They were like, "Oh, this film's gonna suck," and ID is not involved, and so don't even bother with watching the film. Sort of a very, very heated reaction and sort of a no-win situation, I think. So, were you surprised at how strong the reaction was?
I would say that yes, surprised, not shocked, but surprised. First of all, I did think that the first trailer was not very good. They made it off of the work copy, so there was not a lot of the visual effects were done to be able to put into the trailer, and it did look very rushed. I will say that, and it was a little pandering. It was like attention all gamers or whatever the thing was. And I'm like, you don't, as a filmmaker, have, unless you're David Fincher, you don't have a lot of like input into the marketing of film. Like I thought like the poster art behind you was a major battle. Like the first version that they came up with, I threatened to basically like quit the film. Like somebody in marketing had designed this demon and they had made it this bright, colorful thing. And I'm like, well, number one, that demon's not in the movie. And number two, it's atrocious. It's like this, it's a cartoon. Like what are you trying to market? Like I said, we have awesome demons that we created. Just use one of those. Like, so this was the compromise because they basically they wanted who the powers that be wanted a big face demon with the word doom over the top of it. And but they at least didn't do the verse version. This darkened version at least looks a little more acceptable. But yeah, the reaction was a little like, I felt mean-spirited. I felt that they were judging it based on a bad trailer, which is what you do. And I guess audiences don't care at the end of the day what your budget is. They want to be entertained. And a movie, if it has a $200 million budget or a $2 million budget, they care in a weird way, but they don't care. Like, they can go see, Smile was this big hit, $12 million, budget, and everybody can love it. And, you can do these tricks and, you can have a $275 million budget that nobody likes and looks great and whatever. But Doom, because I think that the first film disappointed and did those changes, I think the only thing that the first Doom movie had that was any recall to the game was the first person shooter sequence. Everything else, it was, the first game doesn't even take place on Mars. It takes place on the Phobos moon. They changed so many of the things. And I think that fans thought, oh, they're going to make a new one. There was this expectation that because of the new Bethesda game, that there was going to be, some $100 million epic thing. And when they see this very small movie with no name cast, I think that they felt like there was the comments about this feels like some cash grab to retain rights. And, And it really wasn't. I mean, like I said at the beginning, they didn't want to make it. They made it because I kept bugging them to make it. And, we really didn't have the budget that was probably necessary. My original script was a lot bloodier, but you just couldn't do on a 29-day shoot with a $4 million budget. You're limited to doing what you can do. When you have visual effects, action, practical effects, it was a lot to bite off on. This is no excuses. I can stand by the film for what it is, but I can't meet the expectations that people had for it. Because you play, I mean, I don't know what the final budget was on the Bethesda game, but I'm going to guess it was somewhere in the 9 figures to make that game. So, when I have, 7 figures and a very low amount, it's tough. It's tough. The id Software thing was just a lot of miscommunication. I had, Universal 1440 has done a great job over the years of, even on their low budget IPs, they would go get we brought back Paul Anderson and Jeremy Bolt for, to help us with Death Race. They brought back the original composer, Paul Hasinger, to do the score for at least the first one. They've made this history. It was even for their Kindergarten 2 film, they actually had an offer to Arnold, and he was in a version of the script that just the very last minute he wanted a little bit too much money, and they just basically wrote him out. But they always make that extra effort. So when we were developing it, not only did we go to the video game focus group to add, we went to Bethesda. We wanted their, id Software and Bethesda. We went to them. We wanted either their blessing, or we even gave them, hey, here is the story. If you don't like it, make some comments. I'll incorporate some notes. They were great. They were very genuinely, I wouldn't say excited, but they were not, and they weren't antagonistic or anything like that. They finally came back to us and they said, listen, we wish you well in the film, but we make video games, not films. So we're not going to be involved. And, we ultimately said, well, once this drops, there's going to be a reach out to you. So Universal Marketing and id Software and everybody worked out a statement that basically said that they would just simply say they weren't affiliated with the film. And that somehow when some fan ultimately reached out to id Software and said, what do you guys think of the trailer? And they put out the statement, we're not affiliated with the film. And that got read like it was some hot burn or something. And it really wasn't. It was simply stating a fact. They weren't involved in the film. And I think that helped fuel some of the extra hatred, because I think that people felt that we somehow disrespected them or didn't take their, into consideration, that we were just trying to like live off of their success or something. And it really wasn't the case. I mean, Universal did myself and Universal tried to do everything we can to pay respect to the game, respect to the audience, respect to the companies that were involved. And it was just that initial wave wasn't met with the reaction I would have liked. I have no problem people seeing the film and judging it. And I have a little story. So there was there's a British critic, Mr. X, who was particularly hard on the film. And, normally I'm like, and this was just on the trailer. No one had seen the film. And I had reached out and I basically said, hey, listen, there's a new trailer coming out. Give it a chance. I'll give you an interview. You can shred me if you want, but I go, because everything he had said in his original takedown of the trailer, I felt like they weren't talking about the trailer anymore. They were now talking about the film, which they hadn't seen. So I was like, listen, the next trailer is going to show a little bit more story, it'll be a little bit, better. The visual effects will be, and you'll see a little bit more what we're doing. And, to his credit, he said, okay. And then when the second trailer got released, he said, okay, this looks a little better. And then we did a little interview prior to the release of the film. And, he had no idea that it was a straight to home entertainment, which is what 1440 does. Everybody was also jumping on it going, oh, they're just dumping it to video, streaming, whatnot. And I'm like, well, this is what 1440 does. We weren't hiding the fact we were always made for home entertainment. So all these little perceptions. And, ultimately, Mr. X gave the film a good review, and I think he caught a lot of flack from gamers. I tend to think like a lot of listen, it's not a perfect film. It was a little too ambitious. I think I could have done some things differently. I think I felt a little bit more overconfident in being able to pull off some of the stuff that needed to be done. But ultimately, the story is what I wanted it. The beats of the story I feel work. I feel like there's a good character through line. I feel like Amy Manson did a really great job of carrying this film, being an unknown actress to be the head of a Doom film. I mean, this isn't somebody who seasoned pro. She was fairly new in her career. She had never been the lead of anything this big, and to do all the stunts herself, I think there was only 2 stunts she didn't do, and I don't think let's see, there was one where we needed the long skid as the demon jumped over her in the reactor room and stuff, and she couldn't skid that far with but it wasn't everything else, all the tumbles and fights and all that kind of stuff, and she just did anything we had asked her to do. So I mean, I feel like as we're getting further from the film, there's been a little kinder aspect to it now that people have understand a little bit that this was supposed to be a smaller budgeted film, that it wasn't to be compete with the Marvels or the big DC universes of the world, that this was basically made from $4 million does not go far when you're, and this is the reality we were dealt. But I was it did well enough for Universal. At the time they had greenlit the sequel. I wrote it. It's done. The script is done. And we had got put on the schedule for shooting, and then COVID happened, and that delayed everything. And while COVID was going on, there was kind of a reassessment order at Universal. I'm not involved in the studio. I don't know exactly what happened, but they basically had shut down 1440. I think probably moving resources to Peacock and other aspects. So that project and a lot of the other 1440 projects all got kind of put on the shelf. But it was so it was a little sad, but it's a reality of our business.
Yeah, I'm very sad that the sequel's not going to happen, because at the end of the movie, I'm really ready for a sequel. I happen to be one of the people who really enjoyed the film. It does have its shortcomings, obviously. Like you said, on a budget of $4 million, there's just stuff that you probably can't do, or that, just is not gonna look as huge as something that I expect from like some of the Doom levels that have like huge rooms and just really amazing visuals and everything. And I think the way you structured it in the film is brilliant, that the hell sequence, which is really the heart of the film, that's something that is really so amazing, and that really gets me so excited to see more, and to go back to that world, and really building up to that, and entering that, and building up for a sequel. And now we don't get the sequel, so I'm very sorry that
we had a
that's going to happen.
supremely talented visual effects supervisor. His name is Victor, and he works out of Bulgaria. We shot the whole film in Bulgaria. And, like you had said, we couldn't compete with what Bethesda was doing with the rooms. We modeled it after the first game, which was a lot of small contained rooms on, in the space base. And yeah, it was always, hell was supposed to look surreal, over the top, all that stuff. Now, originally, I'll give your audience some tidbits. So originally, Universal didn't want to spend the money to build the CGI world. So originally they made me go and shoot plates in there was this massive cave in Bulgaria. Awesome cave, but it just looked like a cave. And I'm like, this is never going to work. We brought Amy, we brought some of our demons to kind of like beat out some of the stuff. Like basically what they were like is shoot all this stuff wide, and then we'll add some CGI alterings, but we're not going to build the world. So we ultimately shot a version of the scene. And there's a couple of shots that remain. When Amy first comes out of the water and crawls up, that first rock's real. And then as she gets up and looks past it's all green screen after that. And then all the stuff where she's reflected in the puddle, that's from the cave. Mm-hmm. We got back into post, and so also the original ending doesn't end the way you saw the film or the audience saw the film. So originally you see the demon come out and just lays waste to everyone in the room except for, Amy's was injected with the drug, so she's starting to woozy out, and she's able to get a plasma grenade, and she shoves it up into the demon's into his ribcage chest and blows it apart. And we shot a version of that as well. So studio came, they saw the film and they loved it. I was very happy, which is tough when they see it. When they saw it, it was very rough. None of the visual effects are done. There's cards that says ship flying through air, all that kind of stuff. But they saw the potential, they liked it, and they came back and they said, "You're right, the cave's not going to work." So they authorized 2 days of pickups to shoot the way I wanted to shoot it with the green screen. So we set that up in Bulgaria. But they said, "But we don't have any more money to clean up the ending," because that needed a lot of CGI work. You got a CGI creature blasting people, and it was just like, you have to make a decision. So the decision was easy. Let's do hell, and then we'll push in on Amy, and that's how we'll end the film. I have a sentimentality for the original ending, because I felt like I always like to end a movie. Feel like you can always, if you want to do a sequel, you can always do something where you could continue it on and show something else happening. I don't like ending on that much of a cliffhanger, but it was really the best ending that we could come up with under the financial restraints of the film. Originally, in the first script, it was the cyber demon was the main. So this floating head was going to come through, and it ended up chasing Amy down the hallway. She gets in an elevator. It goes in and like the exec was like, "That's like all your budget in one sequence." Like, all right. So, but Victor was basically, I was directing via a monitor in the United States for the green screen stuff. Victor was on set, and I was talking to Amy, and good thing with Amy is she knew what we wanted, and Victor was really good at, he's super talented. He totally bought into the vision, and originally the film was supposed to be released 8 months earlier, but because we basically had to add all this to the post, so it took Victor a little longer to get everything ready, but he really knocked it out of the park. And that was the one aspect that I really wanted, was if you notice, there's right before Amy throws the grenade, the plasma grenades, there's the iconic photo of the Doom character on top of this, with all the demons stretching up, and there's one in the corner that's looking back at the camera, just like the Doom game artwork. And that was one of the things I really was like, at first didn't have it, and I said to Victor, I go, "Hey, we almost have created this exact cover, so let's just have that one demon look back and
Mhm.
kind of like wave to the audience. And so it's another little nod to the game, what we thought was really cool. So
Yeah, I think in terms of just connecting with the game, I think the movie does a great job because I was talking to one of my friends just a couple days ago, and I think, well, playing Doom is fun, and the movie itself, it's fun. I mean, that's the aspect that's also, I mean, just besides all the imagery and besides all the action that you expect and the horror and the gore and everything, but the movie's fun to play, and so the aspect of it that I was really looking for, and I think that's what's missing from the first movie a little bit, even though I think it has also it has some very good sequences and it has some um, good ideas and everything, but the aspect of fun is missing from the first movie. And in yours, all those little um, like the nods to the game and just the way it's structured and the way you just the visual flair of it, the action of it, it's fun to watch.
yeah, I mean, thank you. There was a lot more like you can't make a Doom movie and make it too like, especially a low budget Doom movie. There has to be a like a little release for yourself. Like, there's like I loved when, the Winslow character played wonderfully by Clayton Adams. He's this big Australian guy. And he's all talking tough and macho. He was like, and then at the first sight of the demons, he's hightailing it out of there. And when Joan comes face to face with him after he bailed, like she just levels him. That was just so much fun to put into that. There was other aspects, the love interest character played by Luke. He had so many little fun. He played it so perfectly. That was kind of a role reversal where the guy's the geeky scientist, awkward, and Jones the tough, character. I thought that was a good relationship and a dynamic, and I loved turning them at the end. And everybody loved becoming demons. That was fun. It was just a lot of fun stuff. That and then another little thing that Dominic, who played Dr. Betruger, Dominic Moffram, he was not my top choice. Like I wanted we originally thought if we're going to put a name in the movie, we're going to put that's the character. He's got all
Mhm.
the big monologues and the big ideas, and he's the reason that demons have invaded because he's the one who opened it up. We thought it would be a really interesting role, and we actually approached a couple of actors who we just couldn't afford. But so Dominic, I went into it thinking, man, can this guy do it? And the first night of him working was in the reactor room where he's doing the scene where he knows everybody's file and he knows what everybody's done wrong and why they got restationed here and all this stuff. And in one take, he just completely changed everything. It's not like his audition was bad, but you have a vision of who this is supposed to be and in cast. And it was the first time I'd ever done a film where even my first movie, which was only a $500,000 like low budget kids film, we had like Olivia Dabo. We had these kind of named actors that maybe they're not big names, but they were people who, if you watched the Wonder Years, you knew who that was and stuff like this. Here, nobody was recognizable. Like it was completely unknown. It was non-SAG. This is like Universal was doing everything they possibly could to put more money on the screen. And and then we're like, let's just, if we're shooting in Europe, we don't have to go SAG. We can do, this. And I'm like, man, you're asking a lot of fairly young, earlier in their career actors to carry off a Doom movie, you know. But they were all really game for it. And but Dominic just completely turned me around, and I even told him, I said, you just knocked it out of the park. And I thought he was a really great Betruger. I thought that we originally went after a friend of mine, Thomas Kretschmann, who played in my U-boat film, and
Mhm.
he wanted to do it, and we just couldn't afford. He's a big star. It's like, but I thought he would have been the ultimate like Dr. Betruger. So I had him in my brain the whole time. But Dominic really came to play and did such an amazing job. And we did a fake ending that I thought I wanted to shoot something that if it got out, like I could like pretend that that's the real ending where you see Betruger as a demon. We actually made him up as a demon as well because you never really see what happened to him. But that was always intentional because I was bringing him back in the sequel. So the sequel can let the cat out of the bag. It was basically going to be Doom Hell on Earth. So we were going to open up with, you don't really see the exact, but you kind of know the demons have come through the portal. So we were going to open up on this house, and this whole neighborhood's getting besieged. The mother comes home with her daughter, and like there's warnings in the TV, there's air raid sirens, emergency broadcasts are all going up. Like basically because you can't do anything with the big budget for 1440, we were basically making it all one house. This is what every house in the world is going through at the moment. And a demon has come and basically kills these, two people. And then you kind of flash forward a few years and the whole world has become, basically an apocalypse. And we follow a group of people that have heard the rumors that there is one last remaining human base that can teleport out to. I made it a teleporter. I think in the game it was a spaceship, but I felt like they wouldn't be able to get the spaceship up before demons would be able to attack. So and then the big twist of the story is that simultaneously we're following this small band of people. We're following this one lone soldier who doesn't have a name. He had suffered some kind of trauma where he woke up and he's basically just been a Mad Max type of character. And this is when I heard from the fans, I said, okay, you know what? This time you're going to get your Doom guy. Okay. This is your Doom guy. No name, super, we wanted, there was talk we were going to go after Joe Manganiello, who's kind of the epitome of what I think people would think is a Doom guy. That's big, 6'9", or 8, whatever tall he is, with muscles and stuff. Somebody like that was our vision. And he was going to team up with this group because that's kind of what happens in Doom 2. Simultaneously, we were going to bring Betruger back, who's been on the hunt for you're learning. We'll go back to the lore that we were coming up with earlier in the discussion, where if the demons had been here and planted these gates, how did they get out? Like what banished them? So we started to come up with that almost that omnipresent that Doom guy represents was a soldier of timeless proportions, that he's is returning to rid the world of the demons again, and in an Evil Dead 2 type of way, where Bruce Campbell was the character that banished the demons twice. So that was the whole thing you're building up, and you learn through the course of the story that Doom guy, his family was the one in the opening scene. Like you start in a flashback, you'll see. So he arrived just too late to save his own family, and he's attacked by his own daughter, who had been turned into a demon, and he has to kill her. And in the process, he suffers he's hit by some explosion goes off, and he hits his head, and but his last conscious memory is who he was having to kill his own daughter. And all of this comes back to him. And at the very end of the film, he's able to help the group to the teleport, and he doesn't go because he knows that he has to stay. And then that was going to lead to our third film, where a Doom guy is going to help rid the planet of the demons and banish them back. So it wasn't a lot written for the third film. It was basically a paragraph, but the sequel script was done. It was very got greenlit fairly quickly. There was the good thing about low budgets is you don't have to recoup a lot. to have a
Hmm.
profit. So we didn't have to make a lot of money, made on a $4 million budget to justify them making a sequel. There was going to be the inevitable battles of trying to figure out where we were going to shoot this and, trying to get that cast. And in no way was Joe ever approached yet, but this was just early conversations and stuff like that. But I was really excited because I felt like, all right, now I've been through the process. I kind of know what I can expect. Even if we're stuck with that same budget, now we weren't going to have to build all these sets. We were just
Hmm.
basically going to be able to go to some practical locations and just, there'd still be some set design and some art department work and stuff like that. But the big costs of the first Doom film were, I didn't want to just, use practical locations. I did it for one sequence that was in the mechanical room.
Hmm.
It works. It's fine. I had to justify it by throwing in some lines. I said, even state of the art bases have basic plumbing because I couldn't just justify like the whole base looks so nice and new and now we're in this area. But it works. You could justify that kind of area exists in a base like that. But we had to build the spaceship. We had to build all the sets. We had to build the reactor. We had to, all those creatures the first time. Like now they had the molds for those demons. So now just remaking a suit is a fraction of the cost of the mold and stuff like that before. So we had all this stuff in place. So the sequel, we had already built all the visual effects demons. They could all just once the R&D is done for that, to put them in a new movie just to give them new action isn't as costly as the first time.
Hmm.
So we felt like not, you'd still have your limitations to what you can do, but also having a smaller cast. It was really going to be Doom Guy and 3 survivors and a handful of bad guys. And I had given plenty of action to just humans, because there's going to be a good human element and a bad human element and stuff like that. So just to divvy up the action so it's not always demons, which was the first film.
Hmm.
So I was pretty excited about it. I was a little bummed when 1440 ended. It had been a place for me. I mean, I had written 3 Death Race movies, Doom, and 2 other projects. I even optioned an original script of mine.
Hmm.
So it was a place where we had a mutual respect and I understood, what they were all about. And yeah, it was a little bit of definitely disappointing to have them go away because people like to mock those kind of home entertainment divisions, but the execs I work with, they were super passionate. They were trying everything they could, knowing that it's not like they, don't know their budgetary, they know that home entertainment doesn't have the ability to make the kind of money that a theatrical release film or something released in the other divisions. To explain it to people outside, it's like think of a studio as like a hand, and the thumb is the theatrical, the middle finger is the TV, and this other with music and all this stuff, and they don't interact much. To give you a better understanding of how hard it was for me to, or how much Universal didn't want to make a Doom movie, 1440 is the absolute last stop for Universal. So when I approached them, they had to go to theatrical, say, we want to make a Doom movie. If you're going to make a Doom movie, we can't make ours. Then they got to go to TV. They had to go to all these other places,
Hmm.
every other division, and have them all say no. So to all the people who still think like that this was just some kind of cash grab to keep rights, like nobody wanted to make the Doom movie. And then we got enough people that wanted to make a sequel. So that was good. But, I credit 1440 for the revitalization of the Chucky franchise. Don's been able to go off and make a great TV show companion to what, his 2 1440 films were. Tremors, the Tremors films have been massively successful for them. They so much so that they tried to do sci-fi, tried to do a new Tremors show that just I don't know what happened to it. They should have maybe used the developers in the 1440 area because their films were very successful. For years, that 1440 execs were telling me they were dying to stop making Scorpion Kings, but Netflix kept calling saying these are people watch them so passionate so much. We're ordering another one and ordering another one. So it was cheesy, fun films that didn't take themselves too seriously because you couldn't. You can't. You can't make Oppenheimer for 1440. It's just not going to happen. You couldn't even release my Death Race movies in the theaters with the amount of over the top crazy violence and sexual and crazy misogynistic, like just wildness. Like they're just too crazy. But that's what's fun about the smaller medium to release these pictures, which I don't know who fills that void now, but it was a good run while it lasted.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, back in the days when you had video stores, you had those direct-to-video releases, and I mean, they didn't have as much budget as the big studio films, but you went to them because you wanted to have like a fun experience. You wanted to see the creativity of somebody dealing with the fact that they didn't really have much money. You wanted to see certain types of stars that didn't necessarily star in the bigger movies, but here they got lead roles, and here you got to see, the more violent stuff, the more exciting stuff, the horror stuff. I mean, that's the fun part of it, right? So yeah.
It's like, yeah, I get it. There was when you had this perception that there was definitely the aspect when a studio didn't like, in the 90s when you had this boom of home entertainment and videos and, yeah, if a studio looked at it and said, this movie turned out terrible. Are we really gonna spend another 50 million marketing a movie that we think is terrible? Or should we just quietly release it to video and, cut our losses? People will see this movie in the theater, in the video store. And I worked in a video store for several years before I started my career. Anything on that new release wall on a Friday, Saturday night was gone. I remember just anything that was people like they would take anything that was new, like everything in the main body was there. You'd have a couple of people, in the horror section or whatnot, but everybody took a new release. I mean, I remember when Hook came out, there was two big sections of Hook, the Steven Spielberg film, and every single one of them was gone. And I'm like, no, and it didn't even matter if people had seen the movie in the theater. Even the biggest box office hits, people would rent. So anything on the new release wall. So I get that perception carried over that what the studio started doing was making movies directly for home entertainment because there was obviously an audience for it and there was a demand, and if you made it for a certain amount of money it could be profitable. Somebody once told me at 1440 like that they didn't make the movies that made a ton of money, but they made the movies that kept the lights on. Like, if we spent 4 million on Doom and Doom ultimately makes them 10 million, there's 6 million in profit that can be, for basic stuff. Whereas something like Megan can pay for, massive amounts of development and all that kind of stuff. Because when you get a hit in the box office level, it's massive. But when you don't really get a hit at the video. Well, you did it originally, like Death Race 2 apparently had sold so many DVDs that it almost had sold as many DVDs as the first Death Race that had Jason Statham. It was super popular. Rule had done such a great job. The budgets were a little higher back, like in the early, that was like early 2009, 10, I think that came out. And that budget was actually 7 million for Death Race 2. And he put every single nickel on that screen. He did such a great job we had Sean Bean. I mean, the movies it looked like a feature film that just happened to be released on home entertainment. And the budgets got smaller and stars got a little smaller and the set pieces got smaller. So I can see what happened if you're a Universal, exec or who's ever making the financial decisions. Go, we just launched this new streaming app. Why are we putting resources towards a
Mm.
home entertainment division when Peacock is a home entertainment division? They're the same thing. So, and everybody's trying to make, what I don't get about the streamers is they're making they're making a home entertainment product, but they're spending $90 million on a movie.
Mm.
That's not the model for a home entertainment. The home entertainment is much smaller, which is I think why you're seeing some growing pains with all this kind of stuff and why they shelving a Batgirl or for tax write-offs or something like that. I don't know all the intricacies about it, but I do know that home entertainment product can't a home entertainment movie can't cost $90 million. That's just not going to be realistic in the future.
Mm. Definitely not. Is there any chance of someone else picking up the Doom sequel, or is that a rights issue that the rights were tied exclusively to Universal?
I would say, there's always a chance. You never know in Hollywood, right? I don't know the intricacies of the deal that they made to hold on to the rights, but they're not going to just simply let a property like Doom leave. Now, what fans probably don't want to hear is that Bethesda in it, they don't want their games made into movies. So anyone hoping for a Neil Blomkamp $150 million Doom movie, it's going to be based on the same three games that I made mine off of, because Bethesda's not going to license the new products. They just won't. I mean, there could be a change in philosophy, but the moment they do that, they're afraid that, like it did the last time, it kind of, what does it do for their property? It doesn't increase the value of. Why you'll never see a Grand Theft Auto movie based on the games is
Mm.
why would they need to? Uh, Mario Brothers had run its course, and it is what it is at that point, and they can make a kids movie that's very, authentic and favorable to the property. But I don't see that happening. Could sci-fi pick it up? Could Peacock say, hey, this, let's make your version of it? Maybe. In my experience, execs in other divisions want, if they're going to make a Doom movie, they would probably want to bring on their own people and develop their own script. And it's not like, once again, being realistic about what the film I did, it wasn't so memorable that there needs to be that film, that storyline told again. It could be somebody, a new filmmaker, a vision coming in. So I would say very minimal to none. I guess the Jim Carrey, there's always a chance, moment. But no, I've kind of mentally moved on. All the execs I was working for are in other places. The script is still over there. Clearly, they paid for it. So I don't get the rights back to that. So yeah, I think that it's going to basically exist in this podcast and and in my hard drive. But I got to make the Doom Annihilation, which I was very happy about, and had a nice career run with the Death Race movies, and looking forward to what's next.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. What's next for you?
Well, it's been a really interesting few years. COVID clearly altered a lot of projects, and then the strikes have altered others. I had a couple of projects that I was attached to direct that the strikes pushed. I'm hoping to salvage two of them. There's a supernatural thriller that I wrote that we're hoping to shoot in Georgia in the early part of 2024. I moved to Georgia, USA, and it surrounds. It's called Cipher. It's I found in some research I was doing for another project. there was this German army field typewriter that Hitler had issued to all of his officers. And if you look at it's a real one, it's called the Olympia Robust. And above the 5 key, if you did the shift 5, it's the 2 SS symbols. The moment I saw it, I saw like a poster. And I basically developed, it's a similar themes to a monkey's paw, where you type something and it comes true, but not the way you want it to come true. So hoping to shoot that early part. It's been a project I've been working on for a while. It's had a couple of false starts, and I'm very excited about it. It could be something. I was always some of my favorite movies are Oculus, Christine. I always like haunted object stuff because it's so freaky. And then there's this kind of out of left field action comedy that I just got attached to like recently, called Avenging Crew. And it's a really funny premise about 3 guys who were bullied nonstop in middle school and high school by this one man. And now you flash forward 30 years, and that bully has become one of America's most wanted, FBI's 10 most wanted. So these 3 guys who've had their life defined by them being bullied they want to be the ones that capture the bully and get the revenge. So it's in the same tone of a Horrible Bosses. I don't know how they found me, but the producers found me, and it's really very funny, clever, with some fun action, like over the top characters. It could really be fun. So I'm hoping to do that right after Cypher. They're still working on the scheduling and stuff like that. So hopefully I'll be busy for 2024, because 2023 was pretty not busy.
Well, they both sound like cool projects, so I'm really looking forward to seeing them. And it's good to hear that you have new stuff in development.
Thank you. Yeah, no, listen, I would have loved to continue making some Death Races and Dooms and stuff like that. But, this is the path that, another fork just hit. You gotta hit that next one and keep going. I've somehow managed a 20-something year career. I don't know how. It's finished, I've directed 7 movies, and I can't believe every time I get a new one, I'm shocked. It's so hard. Had I known when I was in my 20s, I was a PA and on sets, and I really wanted to direct, and I didn't know at that time I was choosing a career of temp jobs and insecurity, and I guess nobody really has job security anymore. I've had friends who are lawyers lose their jobs, so there's nothing that can guarantee you anything. But knowingly going in and going, all right, I'm working on this movie. It's really a cool experience, and in 4 months, I got to go find another one, and then another one, and another one. So it's tough. It's the demand is you have to put more into it. You can't just write a script anymore. You have to write a script, and then you have to write like a sizzle kind of companion piece. And some people are now going and making short films that represent the script, and it's like, man, this is just part of me thinks it's because there's such an overwhelming demand, and part of me is executives are getting a little lazier. Nobody wants to read the script, they just want to see it, which is, I think, what's led to this explosion of reboots and dragging out old IPs and stuff like that. People are afraid of what's new, and and if they just give audiences a chance, I think audiences would embrace it. They clearly embraced Oppenheimer, and even though Barbie is based on an IP, there never really been a movie of that scale with that type of cast. I credit Warner Brothers there for basically saying, we're going to go for it here. We're going to put the 2 most beautiful people in the peaks of their career in this Barbie property, and it's going to connect, and Christopher Nolan basically taking a 3.5, whatever hour drama and making it have close to $1 billion worldwide on a
Mm.
movie that had no action in it at all. It's like, and you compare that to, okay, Indiana Jones 5 and the Marvels, and people just want to see something new. They're craving it, and we're
Mm.
not giving it to them. And it's not like writers, directors, actors, that don't want to. Like none of
Mm.
us want to be writing the 10th version of Snow White. Like, I mean, we don't want that. I kind of say, like, I tell people, like, if you let TV writers pitch their ideas, you get Sopranos and Breaking Bad. If you let studios pick it, you get Fuller House and the Wonder Years reboot. And it's sad because it's like, the copy of a copy is inferior. I was inspired by Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and now the next generation, are they being inspired by the reboots of these and the copies of these? And I feel like there's going to continue to be this lack of creativity because we're just
Mm.
regurgitating material, and we don't have to. There's lots. I mean, I'm always shocked when I hear a new song I love. You would think music has a much longer history than film and TV, and you're still new music. Like,
Mm.
how come no one ever put that phrase together with those chords before? Like, and that can still happen with movies and stuff like that. I mean, we just need to trust the audience is wanting that kind of stuff the same way they wanted it the first time around. I
Mm.
don't know why, like, we think that sequels were never the norm. I mean, cinema was around for 100 years. What was the first sequel? Like, was it maybe the Bond movies were kind of sequels? Like, I don't
Well,
know.
the
You make
Universal horror films had sequels like
Universal
Bride
horror
of
movies,
Frankenstein and
yeah,
Return of the Wolfman, stuff like that.
but they were
So
always
yeah, but
kind of like new story. They weren't like the direct sequel. Like they were,
um,
but I think what I
yeah, and
mean.
there were
Like,
exceptions
never,
basically. I mean, that was something that wasn't really expected that they would churn out sequel after sequel after
and now
sequel.
you can't pitch anything without having it. Like, what's the franchise potential?
Uh,
Well, I don't know. The way I want it, everyone dies. What are you gonna do? I know Shane Black didn't want like Lethal Weapon 2. Like it was supposed to be that. That's the story. Like boom. And then he even tried to kill off his guy, Mel Gibson in part two, I think. Just stop it. You can never stop like a sequel machine. But
mm.
some of these, the funniest one was, well, from my experience, was so we did Death Race 2, and I was told that this was a prequel, and I had to connect it right up to the beginning of Paul's, remake. So here I am. I'm all right, and I worked really hard to get it perfectly aligned, and I did. I felt like I got it to what it is. The movie was, as I said earlier, so successful for selling. They immediately greenlit Death Race 3, and they said, okay, so this is going to go. I thought when they said that we were going to make a sequel to the Statham movie because I had connected it. There was nothing, there was no
Mm.
room. And they go, no, it's going to go right between those two. And I go, so I'm writing a sequel to a prequel that connects, that goes before the remake. I was like, I'm too confused. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I figured I took that approach for Death Race 3. I was like, all right, this makes no sense. So I'm just going to go absolutely crazy. And that's why we came up with let's just take them out of the prison and put them in Africa because they're going to shoot this in South Africa anyway. So let's just have a desert race. And it was so much fun. Like I actually thought like we had lower money to make that one than the other one, but it felt bigger because you were riding across these major deserts, and it's just a lot of fun. So that's why well, part of me, I don't, I want more original films. At the same time, like it's a fun challenge to a filmmaker when the studios basically say that to you. Like, okay, we're making this. So figure out, like they don't come to you and say, this is what we're going to do. They just say, do that. And you've got to figure all that out. And what I liked about 1440 was there wasn't that pressure from all these other entities, because this was going to be made for home entertainment. So we could pitch something, and I'm literally talking to two people who are the ones that are basically to sign off on it. And, you know, Paul Anderson would come in with the story for the death races. We'd work on the story together and then pitch it to Universal, and then I'd write the script. So when Paul is like an amazing, passionate filmmaker. So when he speaks, you let him do all the talking. He's much more eloquent than I am. And he would get the Universal execs super excited. And then that's the script we would write, like, and with very minimal interference until editing. And then everyone's kind of in editing, but
once it becomes concrete, then
yeah, it's I would say that in my experience, like I've had much worse experiences with independent financiers and filmmakers than studio. I feel like everything from the deal making process. So like when you go to make your deal with an indie financier, any dollar they don't give you, they keep. Studio, it's not their money when you're talking to the business affairs people. So like if you ask for X amount of money, they're not going to personally hold it against you. They're just either going to say no or yes. But an indie financier will go, well, now you can't have this set, because you're taking out, like they'll just make you feel super guilty. And then when, especially in the Death Race and Doom, like Universal could have easily just said, if people think they didn't care, which is the perception of these smaller movies, oh, they're doing it for cash grabs, they're doing this. No way did they like greenlight 2 days of green screen shooting and push the delay 8 months and spend more money to develop that hell sequence. They would have just released the rough stuff we had done in the cave and cleaned it up a little bit and go away. That's just product. But they don't. They actually cared. Like, and I have seen where, execs just want to chop things because, there was one instance where I had a financier who didn't like the actress, like, because apparently she didn't want to have a drink with him. So he kept giving me notes to reduce the character. I'm like, these make no sense. The chaos, we had this test screening for Chaos where the 3 things that people responded to most in Chaos was the opening bank heist. Jason Statham, overall Jason, they loved him. And Keegan Connor Tracy. And this exec kept coming back at me going, the opening robbery was like 3.5 minutes or something. We have to make that shorter. And I go, well, the audience said they like it. Why did you pay for this test screening? And then they kept, oh, we need to make Jason more serious. Take out his little one-line jokes. I go, they love him for this. This is his little calling card in the movie. If you take out all his one-lines, he's not going to say anything. And then he's like, I don't think that girl's appropriate. I'm like, but everybody's responding to her. We're still talking about her 20 years later. It's like, if you remember, like, Justine Waddell was the actual female lead of the film, but everyone remembers Keegan. It's a scene stealer. And, nothing against Justine. She did what we had asked her to do, but like, Keegan's now moved on to directing because you could tell she was extremely smart, wanted to know every kind of thing. And there's a reason, that you still talk about like people like that. You still talk about Statham from these movies. There's a reason he's a major star and he's got that charisma. You don't just cut it for whatever you think. Like as a filmmaker, you never, ever will turn away a good note. It doesn't matter where the good note comes from. I used to joke like, just anyone have the best idea, I'll just take credit for it on the DVD commentary. But they stopped doing DVD commentaries because they cost too much and people stopped buying, physical media. So, which is another thing. Like now people are all like bummed out that these streamers are are taking shows off. Well, go buy the DVD and own it, and then you won't have to worry about that kind of thing.
Mm.
Your library looks pretty good. Um, so it's, you know, it's really, ultimately I want audiences to be happy with the product that we provide them. And we have to start giving them more respect and, you know, just new stories to be inspired by.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think a little bit more risk taking would definitely help. I think there's room for both. I mean, people enjoy sequels, and I mean, as someone who watches a sequel, I enjoy the fact that sometimes, okay, this wasn't a movie that, really needed a sequel. So I'm kind of curious how they figured out how to continue the story. So it's kind of fun watching that. And sometimes it's, some of the
Hey,
series, like the Fast and the Furious movies, people can't get enough of that. So obviously there's room in this world for sequels and for telling the same stories over again. But I think there's also room for new stories. There's also room for just daring to do something different, for giving us new ideas, for trying to, I don't know, address stuff that happens in this world and in
I
today's
re
world.
Absolutely. And I realize, somebody like me who basically has made a career out of sequels, prequels, reboots, it might come across a little hypocritical. It's not. This is part of the problem, like what I was talking about earlier, is this is the stuff the studios want to make.
Mhm.
So if you want to have a career, especially with somebody at my level, I'm not at a David Fincher level where I can just pick and choose my projects and pick and choose my cast and get the budget I want and stuff like that. And it's fine. I get it. He's made hits and classics and stuff like that. And he's earned that right. Nolan's earned that right. These guys have earned that right. I kind of fit in that mold of, I don't go over budget. I think I'm pretty easy to work with. I feel like I will take everybody's opinion into consideration. I mean, I keep getting hired by the same people, so I must not be horrible to work with. Because once again, where it's not like you have to work with me. Like there's these projects, they don't make tons of money. I'm not a selling point. Like when you talk about people's fees and what they make, like you only are worth what you can, what the studio will pay you. Just because I'm a director doesn't mean I should get paid the same much as Patty Jenkins, who's made $1 billion with Wonder Woman or something. You get paid based on the fact that you're marketable, that they can not only market you to an audience, that they can market you to a cast, that they can approach Margot Robbie and say, okay, we have Greta Gerwig attached to direct this. She did Little Women and Lady Bird, and and Margot Robbie can go, great, that's awesome, and you're going to pay Greta Gerwig because she can help attract that cast. Or you can put, this is a movie from Christopher Nolan, and he is like Spielberg, like Ridley Scott. Audiences around the world are now attracted to, oh, if Christopher Nolan's directed it, I know it's probably something I'm going to like because he's
Mhm.
history. I basically I take a little bit of money that the studio has for these smaller projects, and I don't go over budget, and they're able to see some, profit. Maybe not megabucks, but enough that, okay,
Mhm.
we can have Tony do that. And I get it. It's led to I have fun. I don't have any, this is my career, but like, would I love to see my cipher script go that I wrote 10 years ago that I've been, trying to go? Sure, that's an original piece. And it totally didn't exist had not been for me, and that's exciting, and I would hope that audiences would want more of that, especially when you're talking that genre. The audiences feel a little bit more accepting of new, like the
Mhm.
horror, that kind of genre. This is not really a horror movie, but it'll be put in that genre probably, where horror audiences just, they're different than a video game audience. Like they want more product. They're a little bit more give you a chance versus the tougher video game critics that are judging you to like a standard that just can't be met.
Mhm.
Like, you know,
Yeah. Horror fans are also totally okay with not having any stars in the movie. They're totally
no
okay with
stars, no
having
budget.
just a little budget. Yeah, just very, very little money. They're totally
Paranormal
fine with that.
Activity, Blair Witch Project, these movies were
Yeah.
made, the great Chris Rock joke was, I saw Blair Witch Project, they made that for 50 grand. No way. Somebody's walking around with $45,000 in their pocket. Uh, so, but then, and it's funny because in the horror world, if you do something too polished, they'll
Hmm.
criticize. Like they want more of that edgy kind of, a little bit rough around the edges in their horror
Hmm.
movie. That's why I think the greatest success story in the last few years that, we move on to the next topic too quickly, but I think it's Parker Finn's Smile. I mentioned it earlier. This was a
Hmm.
movie that was made specifically for the platform, the Paramount streaming. And some genius, they saw it and said, wait a minute, it's too good. It's too good to just, there could be some money here. And they tested it. It tested through the roof. And there's a great, there was a whole interview I heard with him with Mick Garris on Mick Garris's
Hmm.
podcast that he's just wrapping up now, sadly. Used to go there for all my horror interviews, but and the way Parker talked about it, it was like this like I was so jealous of the fact that here's this kid who makes this short movie who gets to do $12 million for that movie. That's a lot of money. That's people think, oh, you don't need $200 million to make a movie. I mean, I proved that, but you can make a successful theatrical film and not spend. That's another part of the big problem. The studios are spending way too much money on budgets,
Hmm.
and they're trying to make it for everybody, and then they end up making it for nobody. So Parker's, he basically makes it for the streamer, and then he doesn't even know what's going on when suddenly the heads of Paramount are in the next test screening, and the next test screening was even bigger numbers. And they're like, okay, we're going to put this little teaser in front of Maverick. And it was just that one where they dolly past the room and the guy's smiling. And it's like, smile, smile, smile. And then everyone was talking about it. You don't need a lot of money to market a movie these days with social media. You don't need, I mean, yes, I didn't even realize that the star of Smile was Kevin Bacon's daughter. Like
Oh, okay.
that totally had gone over my head because I didn't even,
Hmm.
it didn't matter. Like I wasn't drawn to the movie because of an actor. Anyway, so I forgot what we were talking about, but I like that. It's good. It's a good tangent.
Yeah, definitely. State of the industry and well, I think the need for a more original material.
I watched Dial of Destiny the other night,
Hmm.
the new Indiana Jones, and I grew up. Raiders of the Lost Ark was, in my opinion, still one of the great. I always preferred Indy over Bond because Indy had a whip, he had a little pistol, and he had his brains. Bond had all these gadgets, so I always
Hmm.
I like that rugged. He was in the past. There was no technology to help him. I always kind of like that. And I'm watching the opening scene where the technology has, sure, the de-aging is much more advanced in a way that was pretty impressive in this film, but I couldn't help every moment thinking, how great was the flashback at the beginning of Last Crusade when you were introduced to the young River Phoenix
Hmm.
as Indiana Jones, and the great transition from the hat being pushed down to being pulled up. And I'm like, we've lost that creativity by just saying, just do the visual effect on it, just do that. And I'm like, and then when you realize what they spent to de-age Harrison Ford, it's like, why not just give another actor a chance and let the audience? I mean, we always use younger actors to, Goodfellas. I don't know. I feel like visual effects were created originally to help enhance what you had, and now they've supplanted and started to become what the story's about rather than, it's like if you go back to Jurassic Park, there was a great article a few years ago about why it seems like the CGI in Jurassic Park is better than the CGI in Jurassic World, where it's technically not. I mean, you go frame by frame in the
Hmm.
new Jurassic Parks, it's insanely gorgeous, but why does it look so much better in 1993? It's because Spielberg knew you shoot in the rain, you shoot with the night, you use puppetry for some of the close ups. the visual effects were just to get those couple of wide shots to
Mm,
sell the big illusion. And then when you come in and you physically make the movie, the acting is better because those actors are looking at that huge puppet monster with the big choppers coming at you. And nowadays it's all on green screen. It's all you're asking an entire generation of actors that are basically following a tennis ball. And that's
mm,
not to criticize all actors, but even the best actors need a little of the environment.
yeah.
And I think we're starting to see, the visual effects, in my opinion, for some of these newer movies aren't nearly as good because do they have to be with kids watching all the video games? And because the video game technology isn't what CGI for films used to be, and are they getting accustomed to, it's not perfect, but it's fine enough.
Mm,
I prefer my visual effects like how Nolan does his, and really,
mm,
the way somebody had said something silly like, oh, in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, there's hardly any visual effects. And I'm like, no, it's all visual effects. It's just hidden in the dark.
yeah.
And
Yeah. You
it's
don't
just,
notice it.
and it's really well done because where visual effects go, where they start to go bad, and a lot of people don't get it, is it's not necessarily the visual effect people's fault. It's when they decide to change their mind in post. If you
Hmm.
plan to shoot something and keep to that plan and work on that plan the whole time, your visual effect's going to look a lot better than if you get into post, figure out it's not working, and then try to change it or just change it for whatever's sake. That's why Ridley Scott, Spielberg, Nolan, nobody gets to post and changes their minds. They have a vision, they stick to it. And that's why look at Minority Report. That's still one of the most breathtaking visual effects films like I've seen. And that
Hmm.
was 20 something years ago. Um, you know, even to Terminator 2. I
Mm,
mean, that still looks cutting edge, which is shocking. There's like a couple of sketchy shots, but most of them are fairly awesome.
yeah.
Um, and we've kind of lost that that visual effects like cinematography, like art direction. It's all supposed to enhance the story, not be the story.
Mm,
And
mm,
if we did that and we lower these budgets, we could actually make more original films and they could look better and everybody would be happy. Instead of
yeah.
pinning your hopes on when a movie has to make $1 billion just to break even, that's not a model that's going to be sustainable.
No, not at
So,
all. And also about the visual effects being involving, I think that's also a huge point. I mean, Jurassic Park is so involving because you see the visual effects through the eyes of the characters who are so amazed at seeing a live dinosaur. They're completely afraid of this dinosaur, the T-Rex that attacks them, and so on. And that's why these special effects work so well. And I often have a feeling these days when it's just all visual effects all the time and you sort of lose that sense of, oh yeah, this is something special. Oh yeah, this is something that I'm supposed to, I don't know, be in awe of or be
yeah,
amazed at because I can't be amazed like 2.5 hours throughout every scene, every shot. I can't do that.
yeah,
Because then every shot sort of looks the same. You sort
yeah.
of need to have something special in there, and then you're amazed at, oh wow, how did they pull that off? That's an amazing sight. And then,
Mhm.
go back to something where it's normal, where it's not that amazing and enhanced and I don't know, with popping colors and
Wow. Well, Christian, thank you so much for the chat. And if there is another Doom movie, if they prove me wrong and somehow work out a deal and make some $150 million, Doom movie with Neil Blomkamp or somebody else, that would be great. I think that the Doom, the Doom world is open still. I don't think I tapped into the perfect movie yet. There's still a
Mhm.
better movie somewhere out there. I appreciate all that. It became a little unpopular to say that they liked Doom Annihilation online, but I got personally a lot of like DMs and direct contact from people who really appreciated it, and I feel like I'm very uh, it was very nice to hear from all those people, and that really made me feel good. And not that I need, that kind of positive reinforcement, but it felt good because I did make it for the fans. I really tried to base a film on the Doom game that I loved. I tried to put everything from the game I could. I was limited with what I could do because of the budget, but I never want to use that as an excuse. I feel like it was, if we aired on the side of being ambitious to try to make a more organic and faithful Doom movie that had been done before. In retrospect, there's definitely, you can always change stuff. I mean, hell, Kubrick pulled The Shining out of the theater after the opening weekend, edited out like 8 minutes. So a filmmaker will always want to change things. And then I was hoping to do some things with the sequel that would directly address some of the things that I knew the fans didn't get. But like I said, maybe that Jim Carrey, maybe there's a chance. But I'm kind of moved on mentally, and I really appreciate you giving me some little time here to talk about it. Go down memory lane. See if you can get Andrei Barkowiak to talk about his Doom experience.